Welcome. In this segment, I will show you how to use Seal-Lac as a sealer before Royal-Lac or any other finish is applied to a piece of furniture. I will demonstrate this process on this entryway table that has been dry assembled. It is made from maple and it has inlays of Brazilian cherry. Woods like maple and cherry are many a times termed as blotchy woods. Blotchiness results from some areas of the wood that accept more sealer than others. Proper Seal-Lac application will take care of this blotchiness. Seal-Lac application can be divided into two segments: preparation and sealing. As with any finishing project, surface preparation is a must. Since the finish will sit on the surface of the wood, it is imperative that the surface be free of any defects. Surface should be sanded to 320 grit. I'll start with the tabletop. Other parts of the table will be treated the same way. The table has been thoroughly sanded to 320 grit. The surface must be wiped clean and free of any dust. I will use a soft bristle brush to apply the Seal-Lac. At this time, I do not know how many coats I will need since the maple is going to dictate that. I simply dip the brush in the jar and apply a coat going with the grain. The second pass overlaps the first by about 1/4 of an inch. If some areas have been missed, I simply go over it. I'll also seal the sides. In the meantime, I have also raised the tabletop so as to get to the edges easily. After a drying time of about 10 minutes for the first coat, I have started to apply the second coat. The process is exactly as done previously. The second coat also gives me the opportunity to cover any areas that I may have missed during the first coat. I am now nearing the end of the second coat. I make sure that no areas have been left bare due to oversight. Now that I'm finished with the second coat, I wash the brush in denatured alcohol thoroughly. Next, I wrap it in a paper towel for it to dry. I also close the lid of the Seal-Lac jar after wiping the cap and jar threads clean. Good morning. Our tabletop has been drying overnight. I notice a few dull spots that I need to take care of. I'm going to wet sand the surface with 400 grit sandpaper and then reapply 2 coats of Seal-Lac and let it dry overnight. I spray water all over the surface. Water acts as a lubricant and coolant for wet sanding. Next, I wrap a 400 grit sandpaper piece over the sanding block and begin to sand, starting at one end and slowly covering the whole surface. I am careful to apply just enough pressure to grip the block and sandpaper. Too much pressure may cause the block to run on its edge, producing deep scratches. After sanding is completed, I wipe and dry the surface thoroughly. The wet sanding produces a smooth, flat surface that is ready for the third coat. With the surface dry and clean, I start the third coat. The process of applying the third and the fourth coat is exactly the same as what we had done for first and second coats prior to our wet sanding. I try to be as even as possible. The overlap of the brush is about 1/4 of an inch. I move on to the fourth coat after the third coat has been drying for about 10 minutes. While I have the tabletop drying, I start sealing the other parts of the table. I will apply 2 coats on each side. I am taking care not to get drips or to let Seal-Lac over the edges. I apply 4 coats of Seal-Lac to the tabletop and 2 coats to the other parts of the table, simply because the probability of encountering blotchy spots is higher in a large surface area. I will complete the legs and let them rest overnight. Tomorrow morning, I will complete the sealing process by wet sanding all parts of the table. I still see a few dull spots. Maple is a tricky wood, but I'm not too concerned. The overall surface looks very acceptable for the final finish. Well, after the third and fourth coats of Seal-Lac that I applied yesterday, our tabletop has been drying overnight. I still notice a few dull spots, but I'm not too concerned, since I know Royal-Lac will take care of it in the final finishing stage. I'll move on to my next and final step, wet sanding with 400 grit sandpaper. But before I do that, let me show you what I mean by dull spots. The dull areas have absorbed more Seal-Lac than the surrounding dark areas. This inconsistent absorption is called blotchiness. The final wet sanding is done just a little bit differently. Let me show you how to do it. First, I spray water all over the surface. Next, I take 400 grit sandpaper and lightly sand in circular motion. I try to cover the whole surface. I'm not applying a lot of pressure, just sanding with a very gentle hand. I prefer not to use a sanding block this time. Holding the sandpaper under my fingers gives me more control, and I want to be sure that I apply the least amount of pressure. I move the sandpaper in a circular pattern to leave uniform and random 400 grit deep scratch marks. Once I'm done sanding, I wipe the surface thoroughly clean and dry. The final wet sanding gives us a very smooth, flat surface for the final finish. The video on your left shows the uneven absorption of Seal-Lac after the first and second coats. The video on your right shows the tabletop after the third and fourth coats. Notice the decrease in the dull spots. This is what the tabletop looks like after the 4 coats of Seal-Lac and wet sanding. We now have a well-sealed, smooth and flat surface ready for Royal-Lac. I'll also wet sand the rest of the table parts in a similar manner as was done with the tabletop. I have demonstrated application of Seal-Lac with a soft bristle brush. Another method is to use a pad made with t-shirt material and linen outer cover. Here is how I do it. First, I take a 12-inch square piece of t-shirt material and fold it in halves and then in thirds. Next, I draw the 4 corners in to form a ball. I place the ball in the center of a piece of linen that measures 6-inch square. I wrap the linen over the inner core to form a pad. Flattening it out helps to get more surface area contact during application. Next, I dunk the pad into the Seal-Lac jar and let it soak. After some soaking, I squeeze out the excess and start to apply with the grain using a fly-in, fly-out technique. I am using the underside of the tabletop to demonstrate the pad method. The fly-in, fly-out technique helps in avoiding accumulation of Seal-Lac at the 2 ends. I recharge the pad when I notice an inconsistent flow of Seal-Lac. Great results may be obtained using either of the techniques I have shown you, using a pad or using a brush. My personal preference is to use a pad because it produces smoother layers. However, it does require some practice to perfect. I encourage you to try both techniques and see which style works best for you. With the completion of sealing of all table parts, I'll move on to my next video, finishing with Royal-Lac. I'll see you then.